Hello Detroit Red Wings fans and welcome to Scouching's Prospect Pyramid series for your team. What we're going to do in this is basically look at all the prospects that your team has drafted and group them into general tiers and basically just take a bird's eye look at how the system looks going into this coming season. But before we do so, I want to define what to me a prospect is and what these tiers mean so that maybe we argue a little less in the future. So, a prospect to me are players within 5 years of their first year of draft eligibility, and they haven't played more than a full NHL season on an NHL roster. As well, the tiers are broken down into franchise players, who are players you never ever want to get rid of, core players, who are players you really don't want to get rid of and are very important around your franchise players. You've also got the depth category, which is pretty broad, of guys who play every single night, guys in your second, third, maybe fourth line, 82 games a season, and you can rely on them. You've got a maybes category of players that maybe have a lot of upside and maybe a big downside to them as well, or guys with a bit of a floor to them, but they have a bit of a ways to go and may not quite have enough to crack an NHL roster. And then there's everybody else, and that's just everyone else, and they maybe have a shot, but are pretty big long shots. So we're going to start in the core category, and there's two names for me here for Detroit, and that's Michael Brunzeg-Newgard and Simon Edvinsson. Now, Simon Edvinsson, I thought looked pretty decent in the NHL last season, and I think he was always a player that was going to take some time to develop into the player that he could be, but I think he's taken step after step, and he's coming along quite well. Michael Brunzeg-Newgard, I felt, was a fantastic addition this year, and I think the upside for him is really high. He's a physical player, but he brings some skill and good smarts, and I think he plays a really projectable game that Detroit fans are really going to like once he eventually cracks the NHL roster. Now, you might come at me for the depth category here, considering it has Marco Kasper and Nate Danielson and Axel Sandin-Pellikka in here, but these are guys that I just think will fill out good roles in the NHL. It doesn't mean they're bad, it just means that they're players that will probably play night in and night out and be pretty good. I think Marco Kasper plays a relatively safe and projectable game and all three zones of the ice. Nate Danielson is a player with a lot of upside, and I think there's a world where he takes some steps up in the pyramid. Axel Sandin-Pellikka had a fantastic year last year in the offensive direction, and I think that as a middle pair offensive guy, there could be something there. In net, you've got Sebastian Cossa, who had a much better season in American Pro Hockey last season. You've got Trey Augustine, who has also been excellent with Michigan State University anytime I've ever seen him. And there's just a lot of really nice pieces here the Detroit Red Wings have added over the last few years. And I also have William Wallinder in here, and I feel like I'm a little bit optimistic on him relative to others. I think there still is a lot of potential in his game, and what I saw of him with Grand Rapids, he's still the same William Wallinder, but I do think there's a lot of upside there. He's really towing the line between depth and maybe here, but I do like what he's brought to the table, and time will tell. In the maybes category, we have a lot of interesting names as well. I think Dmitry Buchelnikov has just continued to get better and better in the KHL, and I think there's a shot of him being an NHL player next year, but I'm not certain of that. Amadeus Lombardi has always been a favorite of mine. He was a little underwhelming with Grand Rapids this year, but I think that you give him time and he could turn into something. Jesse Kiiskinen was a really nice pickup for Andrew Gibson, and I think he could be an interesting player on a bit of a longer-term development track. Max Plante, Andre Becker, John Whipple, and Austin Baker are all draft picks from this year that I think you give time to develop, and maybe there's something there as well. Brady Cleveland, Wisconsin's a place where a player like him certainly fits in, but he transferred away from there as well, and he's going to Colorado College. I expect he'll play a ton there, and I do think that there is a world where he becomes a depth NHL defenseman that just goes around fast and hits everybody, and, there's a role for that in the NHL. We also have the Dauer-Nilsson brothers down here, who I think are potentially NHL players at some point, especially Noah, but I think they do have a bit of a long shot future ahead of them. And below that, they have everybody else, and this is a pretty wide tier, and some people might disagree with where I've placed some of these guys, but a lot of them are on the older end of the equation and just haven't really looked like they're really pushing for an NHL job quite yet. But that said, I'm still a fan of some of the players in this range. Guys like Teddy Niederbach are interesting to me. Chase Bradley's always been an interesting one for me. Max Kilpinen is another one who I've kind of liked. Anton Johansson continuously takes steps forward, and it's possible there's something there as well. I don't know if it's quite enough to put them outside of this tier, but here we are. There's a few goaltenders I have in here as well who I think just haven't quite put up the numbers that give me a lot of confidence they'll be NHL goaltenders, but again, at this range, nothing is impossible, And I think that Detroit is looking pretty good overall. I'm doing these videos starting with the teams that I think are looking the best and working our way down, and Detroit is looking like one of the better prospect pipelines in the league, and they've done a really interesting job adding some really nice talent, and I think there's potential for more if you're patient with some of the guys in the maybe category. So that closes out the Detroit Red Wings. If you liked the video, click like and subscribe to the channel and you'll never miss another video. If you really liked it, you can go to our website, scouching.ca, where a subscription gets you access to a Discord server, exclusive data tables for drafted and undrafted prospects you won't find anywhere else, as well as plenty of other cool stuff like early access to videos, exclusive content on our written blog, and plenty of other cool stuff we have coming down the pipeline. So that's it for the Detroit Red Wings, and up next we're going to be looking at the Philadelphia Flyers.